So we're here at Brennan Theaters today watching The Promise. I didn't know a whole lot going into this movie. We watched the trailer a couple weeks ago. I kind of looked at this week as being an off week. Because we do these every week, inevitably there's going to be weeks where we watch something like Left Behind with Nick Cage that none of us really care about. I kind of looked at this as being one of those off weeks there. We're watching a movie, but it's nothing none of us is really excited about. I have to say, I was really impressed by this movie. Now, I see this movie in kind of two ways. The way it was made, presented, the thought behind it, the acting, all fantastic in my opinion. The only issue I had was the first, I'd say 20 to 25% of the movie is a little bit boring while you're establishing the characters until the actual war starts. When the war starts, they pretty much crank it up to 11 and it never stops till the end of the movie. But it kind of slow getting there. I was kind of bored. The other issue I had, which is probably just me, I don't know if anybody else had this issue per se, but they start talking like political concepts about the war, especially when it's starting, and I really wasn't following it. I know nothing about this portion of history. I didn't know why this war was happening, why these poor people were being wiped out. I didn't know any of this going into this movie. Because of that, when they're talking about warships being gifted and this group and this group and this other group, I was completely lost. And that really worried me at first, because I was like, am I going to be able to follow this movie? Because if I'm getting lost at the beginning of the political speak, am I just going to be lost halfway through this movie on who's who and what side's what? But it turned out that wasn't actually a problem.
The Promise is a somewhat misleading title for this film. That title would seem to be about the promise that Oscar Isaac makes to his, I would say, arranged marriage, his betrothed. Promise that he'll return and marry her after he becomes a doctor. The movie is so much bigger than that. There are multiple story threads, multiple storylines. You have the Promise storyline with his betrothed, but you also have a love triangle. You have him going to medical school. You have friendships and families. You have a genocide. You have international journalism. It's a lot, but these story threads are weaved throughout. They come together, they move apart, they come back together again, over and over, back and forth. So we're getting the journey of a lot of different people. Now, that would seem to not work, but it really does work. It's taking a very large story, but also intertwining it with very small personal story. A melodrama, so to speak. Mainly it works due to the strength of the actors. Oscar Isaac, I would even say supporting actor Christian Bale, and our other main actor Charlotte LeBon. They can say more with looks than with words. So when there's not actual dialogue, when it's just them looking at us, looking at each other, we're getting so much emotion. We're invested in these characters.
I hadn't heard much about this film. I did see the trailer for it. It looked like a love story amongst a war, kind of like Titanic, a love story along Titanic. I didn't know if we were going to see this movie or not in our reviews, but here we are, an off week as Nick puts it. The movie starts off seemingly mediocre, cliche. A love story, political talk, a love triangle implied, going on, building up, what have you. But then we're in for a kind of a rude awakening in this film, and it tells a story that I don't think many of us Americans are really aware of today. Armenians, genocide by the Turkish government, who continues to deny that it ever occurred to this day. I found the movie to be surprisingly moving.
I will say that the other side of me, and I've given this opinion on these reviews before, so if you're a long-time viewer, you're not going to be surprised I say this. I question the entertainment value of this movie. This movie is very informative. It is very serious. It is super emotional. It's like a punch to the chest 8 or 9 times in the movie. There are aspects of this movie that remind me a lot of Schindler's List. Not necessarily in the way it's shot, but in the things they're showing you and the atrocities they do not pull punches for. It is horrifying. As someone that goes to the movie for entertainment, I don't think this is a movie I would have watched on my own. I don't think I would have went to the movies to see it or rented it. It's not that type of movie that I would seek out. Now, with that being said, if you are someone that likes serious historical films, keep in mind that this is a serious historical film with a love story. But the serious historical film is the core of this movie. Watching the trailer, you would think that the love story was the core of the movie. But I don't believe that's the case. I really feel that the war and what's happening to these people and the journey you go on from front to end is what this movie is about. And the love story was just part of it.
There are some cameos in the film. Personally, I found them a little bit distracting. Relatively big names, but they're only on screen for a few minutes and didn't really seem necessary to get big name people to do like 4 lines in the film, especially when we're watching some really, really great performances. That's what truly carries this film, makes me invested in the characters and actually care about what's going on. This is a story I was not aware of, the Armenian genocide. It would be easy to present it in a documentary style where it's information and it's fascinating, but it doesn't hit you emotionally. The actors and their performances really brought me in emotionally, made it a very moving story.
Oscar Isaac, most of us know him from Star Wars The Force Awakens and more or less from X-Men Apocalypse, which was less critically received, but Oscar Isaac gives his best performance I'd ever seen. He deserves an Oscar nod. He deserves plenty of award nominations. He gave one of the best performances I've ever seen him give, and I look forward to seeing him in future films such as The Last Jedi. Looking forward to that as well. It does not spare any details. Granted, it's not overly gory, but it shows enough of what happens to the Armenian people that it really gets to you. It tells a story that I am glad was actually told, because I didn't know about this and now I do. Now I'm aware, and I think that's what this movie tries to do, is raise awareness of this history that not many people seem to know. At least I didn't know. I knew about World War I. That's when this movie takes place. 1914, 1915 is when the movie takes place, over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. Christian Bale, also in this film, he gives an okay performance. Nothing bad, certainly good, but not nearly as good as Oscar Isaac. Charlotte LeBon, I don't know if I've seen her in other films. I don't recognize her name. I'm sure I probably have.
When I go to see movies, the last thing I want to do is feel depressed during the movie. If I cry in a happy scene in the movie and everybody's happy and you get a couple tears because it's fantastic, that's one thing. But I would say I probably cried in this movie 7, 8, 9 times. There's so many horrible things that happens in the course of this movie that you see and it just breaks your heart. It's really hard to sit through this movie, which I think is where a majority of my comparison to Schindler's List comes from, because like I said, it's not presented like Schindler's List is. It's that same concept. It's that aspect of that movie I remember. I remember it tearing me apart and gut punching me over and over and over again. And I feel this movie does that. So if you are interested in this time period, I highly suggest seeing this movie. If me telling you that it's a movie you're going to cry at multiple times doesn't dissuade you, then you are probably the target audience for this movie, and I highly suggest it.
It does start out a little slow. We're introduced to these characters and we're not really sure what's going on, what the next arc is, where it's going necessarily. But once it starts going, it does not let up, and you are pretty riveted to the intensity of what's happening. Danger hits, and it's just ever present. You're looking for escape, and each time that you think there's going to be escape, you're probably wrong about that.
Overall, if this movie were to get Oscar nods for the Oscar season, it would be for Best Picture, Best Cinematography, Best Sound, Best Actor, Oscar Isaac, and probably Best Adapted Screenplay or Original Screenplay. I don't know how much of the story was true. I know the Armenia genocide was true, but the love story with these characters, I don't know for a fact if that's true or not.
It's well made, extremely well acted, and I feel they do a good job of showing this event, from particular points of view, but they do show the event really well. I came out of it knowing way more about it than I did knowing going in, which is good because I feel this is a lesser known event in history. I'm going to give this a score based off of its target audience, which I was not part of. Like I said earlier, if you are someone that hears that it's a gut punch, hears that you're going to cry and it doesn't dissuade you, this is what I feel you'll think of this movie. I think you'll probably take it as a 9 out of 10. I wanted to see how it resolved as much as I wanted to look away because I didn't want to see what was happening. I did want to see how it resolved. So if you go into this movie knowing that it is extremely emotional and you're okay with that, I feel you will really enjoy this movie because it is very well done.
The other big theme I think that I took away from this film was duty. What is our duty to our spouses? What is our duty to our family, culture, religion, nation, to our conscience? Most of the characters in this film have to wrestle with that choice. What is the choice that they're going to make when it comes down to a decision between their life and someone else's, their life and the life of 100 other people? That's a pretty powerful choice, and the fact that we get to see these characters make that choice makes it a pretty powerful film. Very moving, very emotional. I highly recommend it, and I'm giving it a 9 out of 10.
So out of 10, I'm going to give this an 8.5. The reason I don't give it a 9 is because it started off a little slow and a little misleading. I think that if you wanted people to know they were in for something, start off with something that really grabs you in. But I think the point of that was to show how normal people's lives were before the genocide took place. So the movie really changes direction very, very quickly. And you're like, whoa, I thought this was going to be cliche love story. Boy, this is so much bigger, so much more. You're in for one heck of a ride. It's epic, and it's not just about the love story. It's a small element that tries to use itself to entice you in, but for me, I think they should just start off with the big scope, the big picture first. Then zero in on the love, and then re-show the big scope again.
So we're curious, what is your favorite wartime movie? It doesn't have to be a heavy-hearted one. It can be a more light-hearted one, whatever you think is the best. Let us know down in the comment section below. And of course, if you enjoyed this movie, subscribe to the channel for more reviews every week. And remember, you heard it here at The Source.